Hello Internet, and welcome to Parsing John Part 1. Today we're going to be going through John chapter 1 verses 1 and 2, though you'll notice that on the page I have all the way through verse 5, which starts right there. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be tackling the first two verses in this video from N to Theon. Our next video we're probably going to take 3 through till the end if we can. If it starts to get too long, I'll stop at 4. This is, of course, the Greek version. I'm going to go through the rubric in just a moment. Our next video is actually going to be taking a look at the Latin text from the Vulgate. I got the 5 verses here. We'll be using a similar rubric for them. All told, it's going to be about 4 videos, 2 in the Greek, 2 in the Latin, and then our 5th video is we're going to take the work that we've done on the Greek text and on the Latin text, and we're going to compare the two together to see how well the Latin matches up to the Greek. Now, if you aren't aware, the Greek is the oldest copy of the biblical text that we have, so it is the highest authority. Latin is, the Vulgate Latin is roughly equivalent to something like, say, the NIV, ESV, something along those lines, because it is a translation from the original, just like those are. They don't come from the Vulgate, they come directly from the Greek. Translation we're going to be doing here is not meant to be a wonderfully polished translation. If you want something like that, not going to find it here. This is for largely my own use and any of you who are watching to help practice our Greek and get a closer look at the text, not a clean look at the text. All right, so first off, our rubric. Right here I have the guidelines and everything we're going to be looking for when we are parsing each of the Greek words. So we've got nouns and adjectives. They fall under the same category. Verbs, adverbs, conjunctions, prepositions, and other stuff. So nouns, we're looking for the case, the number, the gender, and if we have an adjective, we're going to be looking for the degree, whether it's positive, comparative, or superlative, when it is necessary to look for those, that is. Greek has 5 cases, vocative, which is not going to show up very often, 2 numbers, 3 genders, and then there, of course, the 3 degrees for adjectives. Verbs, we're looking for the person, the number, the tense, the voice, and the mood. We have 3 persons in the singular and plural. We're probably not going to run into any duels, but I put it there just in case. We have a lot of different tenses. The aorist is kind of unique to Greek as compared to Latin. We have 3 voices. The middle one is always very interesting to run into. And then we have the moods, indicative, subjunctive, optative, which doesn't happen very often in Koine Greek. We have the infinitive, the imperative, and participle, which will actually combine a lot of these with these. For adverbs, we're looking for the degrees of the adverbs, if it is applicable there. Conjunctions, we're just going to write down what they mean. Prepositions, we're going to want to write down what case they take in their object. And anything else we're going to treat essentially the same way as a conjunction, just writing down what it means. So there's our rubric. I'm going to move that up over here so it's still visible, but not in the way of the text. All right, starting off, we would want to read the Greek aloud. And I'm sorry, I'm not very polished on this. Haven't practiced lately. En arche ein hologos, kai hologos ein pros ton theon, kai theos ein hologos, hutos ein en arche pros ton theon. And that's as far as we need to go today for reading. Okay, the very first thing that you want to do whenever you're going to be translating a passage from another language into English is you want to find the verb. For an inflected language like Greek and like Latin, finding the verb will tell us what we need to look for in our subject. Once we know what the subject is supposed to look like, it's much easier to find that, and then we can move on through the rest of the sentence. Starting off right here at the beginning with N. N, first thing that we know immediately is that this is a preposition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some brackets around the preposition through to the end of the prepositional phrase so that I can set it off to the side and we don't have to deal with it until later. So en arche, ein is a verb, so we want to close the bracket right here and we can ignore these 2 words and come back later. Ein comes from our verb, our linking verb, eimi, and it is a imperfect tense, so it looks a little bit weird. Linking verbs tend to do that since they're used most often. So we're going to say imperfect, and then it is a 3rd person, and it is singular. It is going to be active in voice, and it is indicative. Nothing crazy going on here with an optative or subjunctive. And the basic meaning of this one is was. Since ane wants a singular subject, we want to find a singular noun. Our sentence here is pretty small, so that's relatively easy. We've got ho, an article here, which indicates to us the gender and the case of a noun that it is modifying, if that is the noun actually appears in there. Sometimes, like in Homer, the article will appear alone and kind of act like a preposition, not a preposition, a pronoun. So ho here is the masculine, and it is nominative, and it is singular. We know this because we know our three articles. And they're the three different genders, each have their own set of articles. The masculine singular is this one exactly right here, ho. The feminine singular is he. And then the neuter singular is to. We've got this one, therefore masculine, nominative, singular. We look at our next verb and seeing os there. This confirms that we do in fact have this form, and I'm not going to write it out again. So these two go right next to each other. We'll write an arrow. And this means the word. So far then we have the word was. Now we can come back to our prepositional phrase and translate it. First thing we want to do with the preposition is write down what case it takes in its object. And looking at the object, we see the sub iota right there. So we know that N is taking the dative case. A makes this a first declension word, and it is going to be dative, singular, and feminine, and this means in beginning. Not going to put an article there in the English because we didn't find an article in the Greek. Now, English and Greek articles, they aren't used exactly the same way, and the further we go on to the end of the text, the more clear that will be. Greek will use it when we wouldn't, and we will use it when Greek frequently won't. All right, so we got in beginning was the word. Got a conjunction here, and ho logos ein proston theon. We've got ho logos repeated again. Just going to pull that parsing over here, and these two go together. Ein is a repetition of our verb of being. I'm going to pull that over again. So the word was. And now we come to another prepositional phrase, pros. Block that off. Ton theon. Our sentence ends, so I can close off the bracket there. Now, looking at ton theon, we can see that this time through, pros is going to take the accusative. And when it takes the accusative, its primary meaning is going to have either in the presence of or before. Now, most English translations would use the word with, and that's sort of the idea we get when we have in the presence of or before, but we're going to use the more literal translation of before. Tone is going to be accusative naturally. Got on there, accusative. And this is going to be either masculine or neuter, since it's the word for God. It's going to have to be masculine, accusative, and singular, masculine. Got an article there. In the beginning was the word. In beginning was the word, and the word was before the God. And conjunction. Theos. Now we've got our word here, and it's going to be using the same nominative singular masculine ending as logos earlier. Ein, another repetition of that one. Ho logos, another repetition of our previous subject. And God was the word. Period. Now, this right here, this verse, there's a lot of controversy going on about it. There are two primary groups that have different ways that they translate this, and depending on how you translate it, it completely changes the meaning of the entire rest of the book. So the two groups are, well, we can call them the Trinitarians, who believe that the Christian God is a God of three persons, one God, but three individual persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, or if you prefer, Holy Spirit. Together, one God, but three different persons. That is visible in the video. The other group, I'm not sure what their appropriate title is, but based on the way that they would translate this sentence, I'm going to have to call them what they technically are, and that would be, and this is not meant to be rude, but polytheists. And the reason behind that is the Trinitarians would just translate it as I have it right here. And just so you know, I would fall under the category of a Trinitarian. The other group, what we're calling the polytheists, they would translate this sentence with an indefinite article because we don't have a definite article appearing. A God was the Word. And as you can tell, the difference between these two is rather vast. We've got the same God as mentioned here, and only one God. And here we've got the tacit implication that there are more than one God. That's an issue largely for other people to handle. However, how we're going to be looking at this as we go through the rest of Parsing John, and if we do any other parts of the Bible later on, whenever we come across a situation where we have a title or a proper noun like that, and there is no article, we're going to translate it both ways so that we can look at the difference between the two different ideas. Now let's move on to verse number 2. Here we have a demonstrative, and looking at its end, we've got hos, which is our masculine nominative singular ending, and it means this. Since in English we can't say, this walked into a bar, because that's very awkward and we'd have no idea what's going on, we're going to have to throw in another word. I could pull the word logos or theos, since they are, because of this word right here, the same thing. I'm just going to say the word him. Or, not him. That's going to come later. One. This one with the idea of him. This one, repetition of ain, was prepositional phrase. New preposition here, so we close this one off and start a new one. Proston theon, period. The end of our translation today. NRK, we already know, means in beginning. Proston theon, we know, means before the God. Okay, our full translation so far then is, in beginning was the Word, and the Word was before the God, and God was the Word, or, if you're of that mind, a God was the Word. This one was in the beginning before the God. And that ends the two verses that we were going to go over today. In our next video, we're going to take a look at 3 through, looking at the length of this one, probably just 4 and 5 will probably be in a third video. But now, real quick before we go and leave, there's one other thing I'd like to say about this. The book of John was written by a first century Jew. And he, prior to, from what we know about him, prior to Jesus actually coming in and starting his ministry, would have been a old-fashioned Jew, believing in the God of the Old Testament and following the same logic that they had. The Old Testament Jews, and you can go through the Old Testament and see this quite clearly, they are monotheists. They only believe in one God. And so, short of Jesus outright telling him somewhere that there are more than one God, he would outright deny the second option of the translation. The first option is the only one that would make sense to the first century Jewish mind. And now again, the difference between these two will become far more clear the more instances where the two options are available we run into. Well, until next time, I hope this was as useful as it was for me, and have a good day.